everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I'm Michael Walker, a leadership coach and mediator, and one of the co-hosts of the Veterinary Business Podcast. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, finance, HR best practice, AI, law, and so much more. Whether you're a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. I'd just like to let every listener know that they are welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. We find lots of interesting information that will advance this as well as additional podcasts. And remember, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and many other popular podcast platforms. Well, today I am thrilled to welcome Dr. Jennifer Edwards. It is great to have you here with us, Doctor.
Thank you, Michael. It's so great to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to go ahead before we get into some questions we've got lined up and share a little bit about you to our listeners. So Dr. Edwards' interest in mental health and veterinary medicine has been a parallel passion for many years, beginning during college when she worked for a crisis hotline and earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Virginia Tech in 1992. Jennifer left psychology, decided to pursue veterinary medicine, enrolled at the Virginia Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine, and graduated with her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree in 1998. She worked as an associate veterinarian in various capacities until 2007, when Jennifer ventured into entrepreneurship and opened her own practice. Through many successes and failures, her 13 years of practice ownership taught her a lot about leadership and business, which I'm looking forward to tapping into today. Jennifer was also honored to serve as the chair of the Wellness Committee for the New Hampshire Veterinary Medical Association. In 2008, Jennifer began a passionate study of transformation, self-development, and spirituality. She found herself struggling to balance her career, practice ownership, motherhood, self-care, marriage, and finances, and wanted to find satisfaction and joy in all areas of her life. Last year, Jennifer launched her transformational coaching and seminar company, where she helps professional women and veterinarians to rediscover joy and happiness in their life and career. And I am quite sure that some of us listening can identify with that sense of overwhelmness and prioritization, and I'm looking forward to tapping into that as well with Dr. Edwards today. Our topic is energy leadership, the hidden force behind thriving veterinary practices. So, Dr. Edwards, we're going to rip that veil open and take out that hidden force and have a great discussion around that. And I've got some questions I'm going to jump right into, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Well, my favorite question, my first question is always, could you share with us what was that genesis of your passion for mental health, obviously, as well as veterinary medicine?
Well, what's interesting is the passion for mental wellness actually started when I was very, very young. So even as a little girl, I had an intuitive interest in kind of how our minds work, how people function, what the commonalities about the way our minds create stories. And I didn't necessarily have the language for it back then, but I just somehow was just very intrigued observing people's behavior, the commonalities in the behavior, and especially the commonalities in where people seem to get stuck or stopped or feel disempowered. And as I got older, that interest just continued to grow, which is why I got my undergraduate degree in psychology. I had an intention of getting a PhD in clinical psychology. And then I was a senior in college when, out of nowhere, because all major decisions I've made in my life come to me as moments like a download. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm going to veterinary school. So off I went. So the passion though of the interest in people and how we work and how we function never went away. And so all along my career, which has now been a 26-year career in veterinary medicine, the study of basically transformation, self-development, how we connect in with our spiritual self, partnered my study of veterinary medicine during that time. So
that is, you talked about that idea of that passion for people.
Yeah.
Like as a young girl, how did you notice there was things about you that were unique about how you looked at people, looked at things?
Yes, I somehow just knew and understood things. So for example, when I was a teenager, I remember times when my friends' parents would come to me to talk to me about issues they were having with their kid who was my friend. And somehow I was able to just say whatever there was to say to have them gain a different understanding of what was going on. I also had a different view of myself. I was very connected into this idea that, well, there is really only one self. There's the mind, there's our energetic or spiritual self, and there's our body kind of all operating together in this life. And even as a young girl, there was this part of me that, again, I didn't have the languaging for it, but I would say, I'm so lucky that I know I'll always have me here with me during my life. And I didn't really know what that meant. But now as I reflect back, I know that I somehow was aware that there was a kind of a higher self, a higher guide that me, my mind, could rely on to steer me correctly throughout my life. So I definitely looked at things a little differently than probably your typical preteen or teenager. So
yeah, it's an interesting. I think the language that today would be, I as a leadership coach myself, I deal with a lot of clients that have maybe 40, 50 years old, and they're just unhappy.
Right.
They've gone down these roads. They've become a lawyer, and they've done, but that was never what they were passionate about. And at some point, they've never found their truth.
Right.
And what I heard you say was you had this amazing opportunities. And I think we use the word spiritual, and I think that's such a powerful and healthy word today. There's nothing better than something that gives you context that's bigger than you to make life a little more smooth and easy. And so that idea of you found your identity, but you never, it sounds to me like, I'm sure you've had ups and downs in your life and stuff has happened, but you've never lost sight of your truth. In fact, you've actually inculcated unique aspects of growth in it that have really brought it to life in ways you never probably even thought could happen.
Yeah, I have been self-guided for the vast majority of my life. And like I said, most major decisions, in fact, I would say all major decisions have been intuitive hits, I guess, for lack of a better word, although I would not say that I've never lost sight of myself. There was a time, I've had a couple of times of burnout. And during those times, I did feel somewhat of a disconnection with that higher guide, with my higher self, and had to consciously cultivate that coming back. Because when we get down into, burnout, which is really just very low levels of energy from a vibrational standpoint, from that space, we are very mired in judgment. We have a very narrow point of view as far as looking at possibilities and creativity. And so when we're there, it is easy to lose sight of that higher self and that connection. Fortunately, I had partly people to help me and also me to help me come back out of that and reconnect.
It's beautiful. Yeah, that's just, a lot of folks don't have that. And that's a real blessing. And what a powerful blessing that is. What's the best part of that, really, is that you have a passion to give it away. And that is the gift. That's what a lot of us as coaches, I have a saying, I don't know if you've heard it before, the saying I use in my practice, talk about, I am passionate about making my ceiling somebody else's floor.
Oh, I have not heard that before.
No, that's mine. That's my original.
Oh, that's your own personal saying.
Yeah.
That's
So,
great.
as my coach John Maxwell said, he said, Mike, you can first time you use something of mine, you use my name, let me get credit. The second time it's somebody you know. The third time it's yours.
Yeah.
Same rules apply.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
but it's that gift, and so finding that we have so many folks that just get into a rut, and their solution is just to work harder and less smarter,
Yes.
and take even away more energy from themselves or from their family or from whatever that looks like, and try and and it's that that idea that you pulling back to give to, and I think that's the thing, is pulling back less laterally and more vertically, kind of getting up, and you've always had a vision for yourself, and
Yes.
how you've seen that. And if you were to try and, because there's people right now that are struggling with what we're talking about on
Right, I know.
podcast,
I
right?
was thinking that.
So as a coach right now, so they're in that right now, and how they're saying right now, okay, well, that's nice for her.
Right.
How can you help me? What
about-
would be the next right step? What's one thing I could do right now when I get off this podcast I could do differently to help get myself unstuck?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things with that. One of the reasons I am so passionate about, like you said, now giving back is because, first of all, as human beings, we might have different amounts of how much we are aware of our intuition, how much we feel, quote, connected to our higher self. But for people who experience more of that compared to people who might experience less of that, there's actually no difference in those people. It's just a difference in what they're aware of. And in our society, in Western culture in general, we are not taught to have an awareness of those sorts of things. And so what happens is we live, many people live kind of mired down in the cognitive function of the mind. But that doesn't mean that a greater amount of awareness is not available. And as I've been going through my journey, even though I had, somewhat of a natural, we call it a gift or natural tendency, still, I opened my practice in 2007. I started studying transformation and self-development in detail in 2008, and I never stopped. So all along that journey, I went to programs, weekends, retreats, books. I worked with coaches all the way up through. And quite honestly, I don't know where I would be had I not done that. So it's not that there's anything special about, different about somebody like me. It's just that I've cultivated an awareness that I now have tools that if I do start to get stuck, which I do, if I do get down, which trust me, I do, I don't stay there very long. I have tools to get out. So what I would recommend for somebody who's just like, well, I'm just stuck and there's no hope, and is to, first of all, just, if for nothing else other than just flat out trust, is just trust me that it is possible and it is available for you to elevate your experience of life. Now, the what to do about it, I would suggest getting help, because unfortunately, and that could be with a program, it could be starting with books or podcasts or working with a coach. Unfortunately, the way our minds are built, the way we as humans function cognitively, it is very difficult to figure out these things for ourselves. And I'm sure everybody's had that experience where they have a friend who's going through something and they're like, why don't they just, and it's so obvious to you what your friend should do. And you're like, you want to strangle them, but the friend just doesn't see it. And you tell them and you tell them, and it could be 3 months later, the friend goes, oh my gosh, I just got that I'm supposed to do whatever. And you're like, I've been telling you that for 3 months, right? So it's a process, it's a journey, and it's often very, very difficult to see yourself when you're in it. So having somebody else be a reflection, a mirror, and again, these days there's so much out there for people to access, but you have to want to do it. You have to make the choice. It's a way of life. It's a journey, but it's very worth it.
The word that's jumping to mind is intentional. You got to be intentional with this. It's nice to have a plan, but what are you going to do differently? So you just heard Dr. Edwards say, that this is a blend of learning, but it's mostly a blend. It's a willingness to reach out and and a willingness to reach out and ask for help. And some of us aren't very good at doing that. Us
Right.
men, we're not really good at that generally. But it's but we're not taught to have awareness. It's interesting you say that. It's when you're 5 or 6 years old, as you would know as a mom, that a child asks over 300 questions a day. By the time you're 12 years old, you're down to 14 questions.
Right.
And in our system, there's the odd one that sneaks through. And so we actually strip out curiosity in our culture, which is the activator of self-awareness. And the idea of, we talk a lot about unconditional curiosity. So that's the focus. We use that a lot in mediation. That's what I have to do as a mediator, is practice unconditional curiosity, which is curiosity without opinion, expectation, and judgment, starting with myself. Why am I feeling a little anxious about what's coming at me? And try and look at it through the lens of that's their best expressed cry for help, not something that's trying to attack me. And to your point, internally, when we keep stuff inside, it just spins around, and our amygdala and hippocampus have a field day holding emotions that have nothing to do with today. But 20 years ago, they were important, but bring them up today and hold us hostage. And so the idea of bringing it out to the light breaks the power of it and breaks the cycle of it. And that's where, as Dr. Edwards said, having somebody help you with that, having a coach. I'm just saying, you're getting to meet Dr. Edwards, so you're going to be able to get her website, and you might want to reach out to her. That would be a great choice. But I'm going to park that right there, because remember I told you about we could go down these trails?
No.
But I want to go back, because I think I would love to hear a story. I think we all love stories, but just a little story about somebody you've worked with in the past, whether it's in the mental health side or in the vet med side, or whatever that is, or even in your coaching, that you've had a significant impact, it's been shared back with you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, real quick, I do want to comment on the curiosity thing, because I wholeheartedly agree. The key to feeling better, the key to being happy, the key to elevating your life, the key to elevating your energy is curiosity. And the reason why is because what keeps us at low levels of energy, what keeps us feeling bad, what keeps us feeling stuck is judgment. And the higher the level of judgment, the lower we feel. And very often that judgment is towards ourselves. The absolute opposite of that is curiosity. So if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, what often happens is that little voice starts yammering away in your head, going, why are you doing this again? Why don't you just get up and go be productive? Why don't you just have a conversation? Why do you let him walk all over you? Blah, 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 blah. And when we can get rid of or quiet that voice and say, wow, this is really interesting. I wonder what it is about this that's really upsetting me right now. I'm like, look at me. I'm down. I'm crying. What is it about that? What am I making that mean? When we can start to explore things from a place of curiosity instead of judgment, worlds can open up. So to answer your question, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Yeah, that's I call it a superpower.
Yes.
Because we don't have it. It's there. It just hasn't been developed. It's been shut down. And so what's the exciting part about it is, again, without going down this trail, but when opening up unconditional curiosity, you have to be able to understand the difference between validation and agreement, because our emotions don't, and they want to hold us not asking the question because it might look like something we're not comfortable with, something there's a sense we're agreeing to, or whatever it is, and that's so again, that's part of the learning journey. That's what coaches do. That's what we introduce, that kind of concept to help you see that in a different way.
Right.
So your story.
No, we could talk about this stuff all day. My story. Okay. There's several. So a story about where, I'm going to share a story that's actually extremely recent, from literally 2 weeks ago. And we were down in Costa Rica, and I was leading a retreat, and we had 5 days of 3 hours a day of content and lead people through a program. And one of the participants who joined us has been working in the field of veterinary medicine for quite a while in various capacities. And when she arrived, very, very nice person, when she arrived, she shared that she was just stuck, done, just spiraling downhill, saw no way out. She's like, I don't know why. She signed up for the retreat 2 weeks before going all the way to Costa Rica because she just saw it and got this feeling, kind of like I said, the intuitive hits. I need to go to this. She signed up, she went, which kudos to her, because a lot of people would find a million reasons not to, and she did. And so she came. And over the course of the 5 days, as I led the participants through various content, kind of like a progression, watching the transformation in her before my very eyes was absolutely incredible. Not only her demeanor, her facial expressions, how much she was sharing, raising her hand like da 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 da. And at the very last day, she shared, I am actually so excited to go home and implement everything that we've learned during this retreat. And for me, that was the manifestation of the why behind my what. For me to be able to take everything that I have been so honored and I'm so grateful to have learned and implemented in my life over the past, what's it now, like 17 years of studying, plus, with my other certifications, to now be able to facilitate the transformation of others, to open up possibility to have them get nothing changed at home during that week, right? The circumstances that she flew out of, she was flying back into those same circumstances, yet she was returning different. She was returning with a completely different outlook. She was now excited because she felt empowered, that she had the ability now to have an effect on her own quality of life and shifting some of the circumstances that weren't working. And that was just, for me, it's like, that's my passion. I can't even express. I'm like at a loss of words, like what that does for me inside. It's like this huge gift to be able to give that as a gift, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hit. It's like I totally get it. I know, like I do a lot of speaking, a lot of workshops and different things, or invited to things. And there's just that moment when you open up a door that, well, actually, what you just described is what we call our model's built around, we call influential leadership. Is what we do. Anybody can manage a process if you have the manual, if it's in your language.
Yeah.
If the process involves people, well, you're going to probably need to know something about people to do that, and they will always disappoint you at some level. But to be an influential leader truly is transformative, and it's what you just described. And it's about giving somebody something they didn't even know they need or want, but once they have it, they can't imagine living without it, and then they can't wait to give it away. And that's what you experience for yourself, what you're doing now, and that's what you set up for that participant to be able to experience that for themselves. And I mean, that's just, we were wired to be in relationship with people. It's the foundational. Even if you're Tom Hanks on a desert island, you still need a volleyball named Wilson. I mean, it's just the nature of our being. So, not a beautiful story. That's awesome. But our theme today that we have been talking about is energy leadership, the hidden force behind thriving veterinary practices. So why don't you unpack that a little bit for us? Let's take some time and just kind of, what does that theme mean to you, and how do you see that as part of obviously the hidden force is something everybody, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So just a couple of things. When you start to study a lot of different bodies of work in the field of self-development, transformation, what you start to see is that many people are all saying the same thing in a different way. This particular paradigm called energy leadership is from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or IPEC, which is where I have my primary coach training certification. So I just want to give that credit because this particular paradigm is from their work. And when we think about energy leadership is exactly what it says. It's we show up every day in our lives in various capacities as leaders. Now, some people have a job title that is a leader. You're chief of staff, you're head tech, you're head of a company. But if you think about it, we're all leaders in some way. We're leaders of our families. If you're an associate veterinarian, every time you're seeing appointments and working with an assistant, you are a leader in that moment. When you're even in the exam room having a conversation with the client, making recommendations for their pet, you're a leader in that moment. You're leaders in your community, with your friends, your family. One of the things I'm going to just pause and say with the word energy, I know we have this is a veterinary podcast and we have a lot of scientists listening, and I too am a scientist. So think about energy from, it's not necessarily, it has to be all woo-woo and weird and, crystals and meditation cushions. From a actual physics standpoint, if you look especially in the world of quantum physics and all of the volumes of research that's coming out of that space, everything, as we know, is energy. So even this desk that I'm sitting at, it feels hard, and it feels hard because it's compressed energy. But if you go down and go down, 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 it's all just energy, just like we are. So given that who we are, what we are, is energy, really, because everything on this planet is, we can start to look at how we experience energy. And in this particular paradigm, it's broken into 7 levels, which I won't go into all of that detail right now. But basically, the energy that we're experiencing in any moment, some people might call it a state of being, a way of being. I mean, there's so many different ways people have described this, is what in a moment, in any given situation, will determine and dictate how we show up, how we perceive, what we think, what we feel, and what we do. Because our thoughts are what give rise to our feelings. Our feelings are what give rise to our actions. Well, what do our actions give rise to? Our outcomes. Our outcomes are our lives. Each one of us right now, at whatever age a person is sitting in a life. And that life is comprised of a whole lot of things and relationships and stuff. All of that is a compilation of outcomes. So what can happen is that when we can start to understand our energy, we start to understand how we're showing up and experiencing life. And we even cultivate the ability to start to consciously choose it in a moment. We also can start to consciously shift outcomes to be more desirable, more favorable. So if somebody's going into, say, a difficult conversation with an employee or a coworker, and they can pause for a moment and say, okay, what do I want the outcome of this? What is my desired outcome of this conversation? I want her to get the message of this behavior isn't working, but I also want her to walk away feeling empowered and confident that she can change. Pretend that's the outcome. You can actually back your way into it and think, what way of showing up inside this conversation is most likely to help me achieve that result? Now, if I show up and I start screaming at her, is that likely to achieve that result? Probably not. If I show up and I start saying, I don't know why I'm bothering having this conversation because it's not going to make a difference, is that going to have the desired outcome? No. So we start to think about, like we said before, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity. What will be the best way of showing up, so that I can get my desired outcome? And sometimes, yes, that might be anger. Sometimes that might be being sad for a couple of days. So when we start to release judgment, we start to have a lot more options and possibilities, and we start to have much more of a say over how things go. And then that stuckness that people are experiencing starts to slip away, because suddenly they see opportunities, they see possibility, they start to see ways that they have an effect on their own life.
You set that up beautifully. I mean, given the audience, we have the science side of it and everything, and you just like all always lead with the pain points. And thank you for doing that, because I couldn't have expressed that anywhere near the way if you had done that. I think because there'd be people that would be, but I think this idea of energy is we're just really saying, and what I'm hearing you say is like try and keep an open mind with this. That it's to the extent that you're comfortable. It's like don't dismiss it, but just let's walk through it. And I want to kind of build on that, because I'm assuming that different energy levels manifest in veterinary practices and have different impacts on people and processes at different stages. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So here's the thing. All of us experience all types and levels of energy. And it's not that, John is level 4 and Susie is level 2. It doesn't work that way. We all experience all the levels during our day, during our daily life. Different people differ in the percentage of time they spend experiencing different levels. And how we experience energy during normal life is different than how we experience energy under stress. And so some of the work that I do with my clients, like we have an assessment where people can actually start to see graphically how they experience energy on a percentage basis, both during normal life and under stress. And so what's interesting is during the day in a veterinary hospital, I think it's one of the places where we fly through transitions of energy extremely fast. And that might also be part of the reason why it can be extremely stressful, because most people obviously aren't walking around thinking, oh, I wonder what level of energy I'm experiencing right now. Like that's just not in people's awareness. It's just not what they're thinking about. They're just going through their day and getting through and experiencing things, thoughts and feelings, and they're doing things. And what's interesting is I kind of studied myself. And so I observed myself one day and I was taking note of my energy levels as I went through the day in seeing appointments. And again, different energy levels are characterized by different things. I won't go into all of that detail, but I was out back in the treatment area, and one of the nurses had left some mess, and I had a few minutes. And so I just got out the spray and the paper towels and I just put the stuff away and cleaned it up. In that moment, I was in, again, I won't go into all the numbers, but I was in helping energy. Then they called me to go to the room. And at that time, this practice still was using paper records that some of them actually had duct tape. I was doing relief work. And they hand me the record, and in an instant, I was annoyed by the record. It's like this pile of paper all mushed into this one folder. It was a mess. You can never find anything. And I instantly shifted my energy to one of annoyance and judgment, because I was judging the records, right? Because, obviously they're wrong. I'm right. And then I walked into the exam room and instantly became of service. Hi, Mrs. Smith, how are you? I was very nice. What can I do? Tell me about your dog. Blah, 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 blah. I then kneeled down on the floor, connected with the dog, and went, whew, very high level of energy. Because for me, connections with dogs, it's I go to not quite divine energy, but I just have this thing with them. So I have this moment with the dog. Then I stand back up and I go right into my medical mind. So, and it was so interesting to observe this in myself, how I transitioned all day long. Now think about what happens when a practitioner, whether it's, a nurse or a doctor, they go in and they euthanize a pet. They're dealing with a crying family, hysterical. It's gut-wrenching. They're there. They not only have to feel with the people, but at the same time, there's a nervousness because they can't screw up. So there's a fear of judgment. So they're in the state of fear. They're in the state of empathy and compassion and a state of sadness all at the same time. Because it's oh my God, I better hit the vein. The vein better not blow. I hope the dog doesn't start gasping. All this fear, especially when you're a newer doctor. And then you go through all that. The people are crying. You say your thing, whatever, you get out of the room. And there's a puppy appointment waiting for you. Well, you can't walk in with this look on your face, because next thing you know, you get a Google review saying Dr. So-and-so didn't even care about my puppy. So you plaster on the smile and you go, oh my gosh, hi, he's so cute. Oh, right? No time at all to process everything that just happened 2 minutes ago in the other room. And so what's happening is this continual switching of energy levels and emotions that go with it. And without an awareness of that, without a consciousness of that, it's like getting swept away, like swept along with like this wave and this feeling of like no control. It's like you're trying to swim in this ocean of like emotion and experience and floundering with it. When you have awareness and consciousness of it, and you can start to notice what you're experiencing, you can say, wow, this euthanasia really upset me. Okay, I have to go into this puppy appointment. I'm going to just put this on hold for a minute, and later I'm going to come back and sit with these feelings. That no longer is a repression of the feeling. It is just a parking for a moment as a conscious choice. That is not going to have the detrimental effect that stuffing it down has over time. So it's happening anyway. It's just managing it a lot better. And then one more thought on that, the flip side is when we talk about energy leadership, we all know that a lot of animal hospitals are experienced as being very toxic by a lot of people. And when leaders can start to understand how they are showing up, how they are impacting people, when they can start to show up differently so that they facilitate collaboration and communication among their teams, when they can hold a standard and hold support and space for people's humanity at the same time, everything changes. Like people talk about wanting to change workplace culture. Well, that's what this is. The people are the culture. Culture is not ordered from Amazon and sprinkled over the practice. Everybody shows up every day, and how they show up is what creates a culture every single day it's created. And when that starts to change, especially the leaders start to show up differently, everything starts to shift, and the burnout just doesn't need to be so severe.
When you put that into that context, again, this idea of energy, that we really have, as you say, during the course of the day, we're tapping into different levels or types of energy, as you're mentioning. One of the things, just simply, and I'm thinking about the audience too, that the folks that are logical and structured and okay, there's a system then. Okay, there's a system. But what's interesting, what I heard you say is that what would it look like is if I knew, and we're just saying, so if energy my energy trend is different through the course of the day based on what's going on, if I track that, then I'm going to be able to learn how to better transition from those different stages of energy. But the other side of this is that it also gives me and the team a mechanism to celebrate the wins, where we can actually talk about, like today, I went from euthanasia to the little puppy, and this is what happened. And it suddenly creates that, it's all about who we are and why we matter. People are the sum of an organization's best parts, period. That's it. So the reality of that, so if that's true, and I think you're going to say, yeah, I've touched on some of the way you just reacted, but the question I have around that is that, then how can a practice leader who's actually looking at this energy concept and understanding how it can move and ebb and flow, but it's something we can harness in a way to help us be better at who we are and why we matter, and therefore what we do and how we do it. How can a practice leader shift the energy to create better outcomes in challenging situations? And I think, from my point of view, celebrate the wins as we move forward as a team.
Yeah. Well, part of it is each person, I don't care who you are, what position you are, what you do in this world, each person is responsible for themselves. And so step number one for anybody is to make the choice to take responsibility for their own growth and development. And once they do that, then there are ways for people to start to learn to cultivate the awareness. And from that awareness comes the ability to cultivate choice in the moment. And so, for example, if you have a practice leader, say a practice manager or medical director or whoever, and level, like we call level 5 energy, is the energy of everybody wins. There's no losing. Everybody wins. It's collaboration, communication, creativity. So if you have a problem with a client and you take a level 5 approach to creating a solution, it is very different than when you take, say, like some people will automatically take a level 2 approach, which is one of fighting and hostility. Well, we're not putting up with that. So no, right? I see it all the time doing relief work. It's especially with staff members, there's this instant like, nope. And what if the approach was, what would be a solution that works for the client, the pet, and the practice? Because those solutions often are available, but we don't look there. We don't see them because it's us against them. It's win versus lose. And inside of higher levels of energy, problems are no longer problems. You start to, not that you pretend that you like them. This is not about inauthentic, like plastering a smile on your face. But what happens is we start to look at things that aren't working well as opportunities to grow and learn. So instead of berating the coworker or talking about her behind her back or ignoring her, we start to say, okay, like, how can we learn and grow from this? How can she learn and grow? Like, what do we need so that this doesn't happen again, from a more collaborative experience? And with that, from when people are operating inside of that energy, celebrating wins just happens normally, because that's what you're present to. Yes, A, B, and C did not go well during that emergency, whatever. We didn't have our crash cart stocked, whatever, like the oxygen wasn't turned on for the day, like whatever, that needs to be remedied. That does not work. And so how can we learn from that? And boy, you guys like got into action so quickly. And hey, Ashley, what a great job you had of like taking Mrs. Smith into the room, sitting with her, because you got that she was really scared about her dog, even when she was a little short with you. It's a completely different perspective of how we react, how we respond, how we approach situations from an authentic place. It's not about being fake, but this is not natural for a lot of people. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. That doesn't mean that it can't be taught and learned and cultivated. Because I guess what I would say is, why not? If what you have right now isn't working, if you're frustrated with your team or frustrated with how things are going at the practice, why not learn new things? Why not expand awareness? Why not try? But it does require taking responsibility, and it does require a willingness to learn how to start to let go of the judgment that keeps us stuck.
You remind me of a saying, if you have an car assembly line, every fourth car coming off the assembly line is missing its right front fender, your system's perfectly designed to achieve the results you get.
Right.
And all the yelling and pointing at that fender that's not there is not going to change the next fourth car having the same problem. So we need to be intentional with change, which is not, we all say we don't relate like change. We actually love change. We're just not keen on the transition sometimes. But I think that what I'm hearing you say is that it's possible, but there has to be that willingness to step out and say, we're gonna do something different to get a different result. We have a vision, we have wins we want to get, we're going to reverse engineer, and we're going to make these changes. So kind of pulling it all together and break back to the grassroots. So what would be some practical steps that veterinary professionals could take to apply energy leadership in daily operations?
Well, I think part of it is starting to start with a place of curiosity and just start observing yourself, observe others, notice what comes up for you. Like, obviously we can only know what we're feeling. Remember that 99.9% of the time you think you know what somebody else is thinking, you're wrong. So perhaps start to start to practice letting go of judgment. So one of the things that stands in people's way of starting to work on themselves and enter the world of self-development is there's so much fear. They don't want to look. They don't want, and why is there fear? Because there's judgment, because they have that little voice criticizing themselves. And that's why people get defensive, right? So if you said to the person making the car, well, every fourth car is missing a fender, and they're like, well, I'm doing the best I can, and it's always my fault, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, and the car is still missing the fender. If there was no judgment around it, if it was just is the car's missing the fender, let's make the fenders get on there, it would be a completely different conversation. And so partly is starting to make the choice that you want to create something different. Say, I'm going to be responsible for that. I'm going to make it happen, and start observing, start to notice, where do you get annoyed at people? Where do you feel disempowered to lead your team? Where do you have an idea that, you know what, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, and no matter what I do, fill in the blank. They're gonna, start to just take notice of some of those things, because those are all going to be opportunities to explore. And as I said in the beginning of this conversation, get some help. It is very, very difficult for anyone to figure this stuff out on their own. It is normal to feel stuck. It is normal to not see how you can actually make a difference in some of these situations. And that does not mean it's not possible. It just means that right now, from where you're sitting, you just can't see it. But it doesn't mean it's not there. You just need to expand the awareness, expand the world of possibilities. And I've seen it over and over and over again, where people are like, holy cow, like I had no idea. And so-and-so, who they would swear would never change, they start to shift who they are. And all of a sudden the other person's changing. And they're like, I never thought he would have had a conversation about this. He's laughing with the staff now. Like, I didn't think this was possible. And I'm sure as a leadership coach, you have seen this over and over and over again. It's just trying to get the message across that so much is possible. So.
Yeah, that beautiful, Dr. Edwards. Thank you. It's, if you think of what a coach does for you, or not a consultant comes in, and I'm here to bash consultants. They come in and they're very transactional in nature. They're about looking at what we do and how we do it and making changes to process. But people have to actually execute that. And coaches tend to lean into both spaces. And I think it's, if you think about a plate for our listeners, if you think about, you have a plate of fruit, you have, banana, apple, orange, and everything on a plate, and you have a couple of lights on it, you see that fruit from that perspective. That's how you see it today. What Dr. Edwards would do, she'd actually move those lights.
Yes.
To give you another perspective on how to see it. Not telling you this is how it has to be done, this is the way you do it. Just changing your perspective for the purpose of enhancing your capacity for unconditional curiosity in a way you start looking at yourself differently, and then ultimately your organization, and all of a sudden you start to enjoy the fruits of that, like Dr. Edwards talked about with her clients, you start to see with your own team. And it's just such a beautiful cycle. And something I found, a question when I'm moving into something new and different, and I want to know a little more about my team and everything, I love to ask a question that I just put out there to everybody, and it's amazing what comes back. And the question is, I'd just like to hear from each person what you're passionate about. And it's phenomenal what comes out. And often leaders of organizations, I've been doing that with people, they come at when we start talking later on what was most valuable, what the takeaways were. So many times the owners, the leaders say, that first piece, because I discovered what all the beauty was that I had, all the gems that I had, and then we started developing a process how to bring them together into where we want to go. And I think it's just the fatal error is not starting. I always say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to set yourself up for a life that lines up to what you're passionate about and who you are and why you matter? And just in our time, is coming to an end,
Yes.
Dr. Edwards. So I'm going to have to wrap things up. And thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your insights and talking to us about energy leadership. That was new territory for me. Loved that. And it just got me really curious about digging into that a little more to understand it more. And we titled it The Hidden Force Behind Thriving Veterinary Practices. So Dr. Edwards, thank you for revealing some of the things that you could start doing differently, but recognizing that the challenge is if you try and do it on your own, and again, we're not, Dr. Edwards, myself, we're not trying to sell you something because we think you should buy the widgets we have. We're trying to empower you with a capacity for choice that doesn't get mired down in your inside stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's about the only way I could put it. That's the easiest way to put it. That's how I put it to clients. And so you can reach Dr. Edwards through her website. It's Dr. Jennifer Edwards, all one word, drjenniferedwards.com. So reach out to her there. You'll find her website is amazing. You want to check it out just to see that. But I also want to take a moment now to thank our listeners. We so appreciate each and every one of you. We can't do what we do without you. So thank you so much. And if you like our podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And isn't that just the perfect opportunity for you to set somebody else up for success? Also, please don't forget to leave us a review. We love reviews, and they will help other doctors and practice owners find us as well. So thank you for the privilege of your time. And until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. On behalf of Dr. Edwards, wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.